Well, it was less than a traditional Christmas for Donald Trump, using Truth Social to spread his
1,000 individuals back to Africa and the Middle East. Starmer dismissed
Africa's biggest nation just became the newest battlefield in America's global war on terror. Without warning to the world, US warships and drones struck deep inside Nigeria, hitting ISIS-linked camps hidden inside thick forests. Missiles were fired, militants were killed, and suddenly one question echoed everywhere. Why did the United States step into Nigeria now? For more than 10 years, Nigeria has lived with violence that never truly ends. From the northeast to the far northwest, terror groups, bandits and armed gangs have turned villages into graveyards and highways into kidnapping zones. But what happened this time was different. This was not just another clash between Nigerian troops and insurgents. This was America entering the fight directly. According to US Africa Command, powerful precision airstrikes were launched against Islamic State-linked camps operating inside Sokoto State in northwestern Nigeria. These were not random attacks. Weeks of intelligence gathering, satellite tracking and drone surveillance had already mapped out the hideouts buried deep inside forest belts near the borders with Niger and Mali. The strikes were carried out jointly with the Nigerian government using a deadly mix of Tomahawk missiles fired from US naval platforms in the Gulf of Guinea and GPS-guided munitions released by MQ-9 Reaper drones flying thousands of meters above ground. In total, more than a dozen precision weapons were used in a single night, making this one of the rare moments in which Washington openly joined Abuja in direct counter-terror operations on Nigerian soil. The White House later confirmed that the camps belonged to fighters linked to the Islamic State Sahel province, a growing branch of ISIS that has been spreading fast across Mali, Burkina Faso, Niger, and now Nigeria. President Donald Trump himself announced the operation on his Truth Social account, calling the attacks perfect strikes and warning that more could follow. He said the mission was in response to rising violence against Christian communities in the region and added that Nigeria must stop the killing of Christians or face further US action. Those words immediately sparked global debate. Was America acting to protect minorities, or was it part of a much larger strategic move to stop ISIS from carving out a new stronghold in West Africa? What makes this moment even more alarming is the identity of the group that was hit. The main target was a little-known local faction called Lakurawa. Until recently, Lakurawa was seen as just another armed bandit group terrorising border villages. But intelligence reports now show that the group has pledged loyalty to Islamic State Sahel province. With barely 200 fighters, Lakurawa may seem small, but its importance is huge. It has become the bridge through which ISIS is planting its roots inside Nigeria's northwest. Its fighters have settled in rural communities, recruited unemployed youths, and imposed strict religious rules on terrified villagers. People who refuse to obey are beaten, fined, or killed. Through Lakurawa, foreign jihadists from Niger and Mali are quietly slipping into Nigeria, building camps, hiding weapons, and preparing attacks far from the country's traditional terror hotspots. This is why the forests of Buni and Tangaza suddenly became targets of American firepower. Nigerian border patrols later reported seeing militants fleeing into the bush after the bombardment, while US officials confirmed that multiple fighters were killed. No civilian deaths were officially reported, although falling debris damaged homes in nearby towns. For Nigeria, this was not just another military operation. It was a signal that the country's terror problem is no longer seen as local. It is now part of the global ISIS map, and Washington has decided it cannot afford to ignore it any longer. To understand why the United States is suddenly so deeply involved, we must look at how the terror map of West Africa has been changing. For years, Nigeria's main nightmare came from the northeast, where Boko Haram and its splinter groups, including ISWAP, ruled large areas around Lake Chad. They bombed markets, attacked schools, kidnapped girls, and forced millions to flee their homes. But while the world was focused on that front, another danger was slowly rising in the shadows. Across the Sahel, from Mali to Burkina Faso and Niger, Islamic State Sahel province has been growing at a terrifying speed. In 2025 alone, the group carried out a record number of large-scale attacks, overrunning army posts, capturing weapons and expanding its control over remote territories where governments barely exist. These fighters do not respect borders. They move freely through deserts and forests using smuggling routes that have existed for decades. As pressure increased in Mali and Burkina Faso, many of them began to push southward, searching for new safe havens. That is when Nigeria's northwest came into focus. Unlike the heavily militarised northeast, this region was already weakened by years of banditry, cattle rustling and ethnic clashes. Entire communities were left unprotected, police posts were abandoned and villagers were forced to pay taxes to armed gangs just to survive. Into this chaos walked Lakurawa and its allies, carrying the black flag of ISIS. At first, their presence was almost invisible. They blended in with criminal groups, posing as bandits, trading stolen cattle and kidnapping for ransom. But soon their true agenda emerged. They started enforcing strict religious rules, banning music, forcing men to grow beards and punishing women for not dressing according to their demands. They held secret meetings in forest camps, recorded loyalty pledges to ISIS leaders in the Sahel, and built links with foreign fighters crossing in from Niger and Mali. For the Islamic State network, Nigeria was no longer just a target for attacks. It was becoming a new base. This expansion set off alarm bells in Abuja and Washington. Intelligence agencies began sharing satellite images, intercepted calls and movement patterns. What they saw was deeply troubling. Lakurawa was not acting alone. It was becoming the operational arm of ISSP inside Nigeria, helping the group recruit locals, store weapons and plan future strikes. Analysts warned that if this network was not crushed early, Nigeria could soon face the same nightmare that Mali and Burkina Faso are living today, where entire provinces have fallen under jihadist control. Meanwhile, the violence on the ground was already escalating. In several regions, clashes between Christian farmers and Muslim herders over land and water turned deadly, adding fuel to the fire. Bandit gangs kidnapped schoolchildren, attacked highways and looted villages with no fear of punishment. In August 2025, gunmen stormed a mosque in northwest Nigeria and killed at least 13 worshippers. Just a day before the American airstrikes, a suicide bomber blew himself up inside a mosque in Maiduguri, killing 5 people during prayer. These attacks showed that terror in Nigeria no longer follows a single pattern. It strikes Christians and Muslims alike, churches and mosques, villages and cities. And in this storm of fear, the line between criminal gangs and ideological extremists has become dangerously blurred. After the bombs fell and the smoke cleared from Sokoto's forests, a new debate began across Nigeria. Many people welcomed the US strikes, seeing them as long overdue. For years, communities have cried for help as armed groups turned their lives into daily horror. So when American drones finally appeared in the skies, some believed it was the beginning of the end for Lakurawa and its allies. Security experts said the operation sent a powerful message, not just to militants in Nigeria, but to every ISIS cell operating across the Sahel. The world was watching and Washington had shown it was willing to act. But behind the celebration lies deep concern. Nigerian analysts warn that identifying the enemy is not as simple as it looks. Not everyone hiding in the forests is a committed jihadist. Some fighters are driven by ideology, trained by ISIS commanders and linked to foreign networks. Others are criminals who joined armed groups for money, revenge or protection. Many are hybrids, switching flags whenever it suits them. Today they swear loyalty to ISIS, tomorrow they return to kidnapping schoolchildren or raiding cattle. This confusing mix makes counter-terror operations extremely difficult. Bombing a camp may kill a few fighters, but it does not erase the reasons that pushed young men to pick up guns in the first place. Community leaders from the Northwest have spoken openly about this challenge. They say that while eliminating Lakurawa is necessary, simply calling every bandit an ISIS terrorist hides the deeper problem. Poverty, unemployment and neglect have left thousands of youths with no future. Armed groups offer them income, power and a sense of belonging that the state has failed to provide. This is why some residents fear that the US strikes, though dramatic, could be only a temporary solution. Once the drones leave, the forests will still be there, the borders will still be open, and the same desperate conditions will continue to feed the cycle of violence. Even the Nigerian government understands this reality. Officials admit that the country is now fighting on too many fronts at the same time. In the northeast, Boko Haram and ISWAP still carry out deadly raids. In the northwest, Lakurawa and ISSP are expanding their influence. In the central regions, clashes between farmers and herders are tearing communities apart. Add to this the endless wave of kidnappings and ethnic rivalries, and the picture becomes overwhelming. The US intervention may weaken one network, but Nigeria's security crisis is far bigger than a single group or a single battlefield. There is also the sensitive issue of sovereignty. While Abuja approved the strikes, many Nigerians are uneasy about foreign missiles falling on their soil. They fear that Nigeria could become the next major arena in America's long war against ISIS, turning local conflicts into global proxy battles. For Washington, the mission is about stopping terror before it spreads. For ordinary Nigerians, it is about survival, dignity, and the hope that their country will not slide deeper into chaos. Now the world is asking the same question. What happens next? The US airstrikes were loud, powerful and dramatic, but experts warn that their long-term impact may be limited. And according to United Nations estimates, Islamic State Sahel province still has between 2,000 and 3,000 fighters spread across vast deserts and forests. Lakurawa, even if weakened, can quickly replace its losses by recruiting from poor villages and by pulling in fighters from the endless flow of jihadists crossing in from Niger and Mali. Eliminating a few camps does not dismantle a network that has been growing for years in areas where the state barely exists. This is why many observers believe that the real battle for Nigeria will not be fought in the sky, but on the ground, in classrooms, clinics, and local councils. In remote regions, the Nigerian state is often invisible. There are no police stations, no courts, no jobs, and no basic services. Into this vacuum step armed groups offering protection, money, and sometimes even food. To a young man with no future, a gun becomes a career and a terror group becomes a family. Unless these root causes are addressed, terrorism will simply change its name and its flag, even if Lakurawa or ISSP are badly damaged. For Washington, the operation signals a new phase. For the first time in years, the United States has taken direct military action inside Nigeria, showing that it now sees the country as a front line in the global fight against ISIS. For Abuja, this partnership could reshape how it deals with the spreading threat from the Sahel. But as the dust settles over Sokoto's forests, the final outcome remains uncertain. Will this mark a turning point in Nigeria's long war against terror, or will it become just another chapter in a conflict that refuses to end? That is the question hanging over Africa's most populous nation tonight. The missiles have fallen, the camps have burned. But the future of Nigeria's fight against extremism is still being written, one painful page at a time.